And I ask first, Gadi, on the one hand, you presented us that complex of all the aspects which are important. And what we heard, for example, from Fabrizio, but I can tell you also from my personal experience that I have in where I'm living, what we hear from some parts of the world is that some of these challenges that we see, of course, are easier to be solved on the local level if the local people are maybe not only accepting but sometimes even pushing because they want to have a wind farm. How would you rate the social dimension and that kind of perception on the local level when you look at the overall picture of what needs to be addressed in a permission and planning process? Kadi. And you also have some concrete experience, I know, in Israel, because you have also locally owned wind farm.
Yes, at the end of the day and the bottom line, I would say that social acceptance is the most significant perspective. And by just addressing the social perspective, it will be an impossible mission, I assume. And that's why my perception is that we need to break down into separate pieces the reasoning for that objection. Because today, if you go with a wind farm and the whole population is against it, and we can see it locally in the wind farms, and once you have multiple locations like this resistance goes up to the government. At the end of the day, the government wants to be re-elected and they want to comply to the wishes of the population. So at the end of the day, you get reduced level of support for such activity. And for example, in Israel, if you look at papers which are currently disputed, you see that the assumption is that in Israel, although there is abundance of wind, it is considered as a towards renewable would be using solar. There's an understanding that it just wouldn't pass the complex of social aspect. So yeah, so at bottom line, I would say that this is the most significant one, but it's structured of small pieces that ensemble the objection.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Gadi. And I'm sure we here agree that wind, of course, has to play a role. And of course, the more we go to the north, the more obvious it becomes. When we speak about northern regions of Europe, there is no sun in winter. We need wind, but I think wind we need everywhere. That is very clear. Davide, are you still with us? Can't see you yet here. You talked about the Italian situation with these 9,000 megawatt of wind farms, which are somehow stuck in the permitting processes. Davide, are you with us? No, I think I can see that the microphone here is muted. Then let's go maybe first again to Fabrizio. So you actually brought this topic up in terms of even not only involving the communities, but also making them shareholders. That is what you have you offer to some of the communities. Is it that you sometimes even that people sometimes come to you and they tell you we would like to have a wind farm and please come and become a partner of us? How is that situation in general for you as a company now with the different approaches?
That this is not a general and common approach. This is more heavily related to the local people and the local experience. I would say that in some countries this is more advanced in terms of mind. So, for example, if you go in Netherlands or if you go in Scotland, there is a more organized approach by people. So you find over there cooperatives that are already acting on behalf of the real and local communities. And so this is it's easier to be managed because at the time you find a sort of soil where you can see the good seeds. While if you go in the southern Europe, it is more complicated, and the local people is more scattered and separated each other, so it's more difficult to organize. This is the real challenge in certain areas. So we are trying to have a more homogeneous approach towards this specific topic on the participation of the people, the local participation also in the plans, meaning also in terms of equity participation. But this cannot be implemented as is flat everywhere, because it's a matter also of the local approach to this and the financial topics, because in Netherlands, as I said, there is local cooperatives that are already organized on this regard. In Scotland, again, they are quite fine. France, they are a bit in the middle, but more close to the Southern Europe approach. But let's say these need to be also studied by us and implemented in the best way as it possible with compatibility with the local understanding of these topics.
How about Italy? I mean, Italy, we all know there are also differences within Italy, because as we heard from Davide, that there are these big challenges. Would that help to overcome that lockdown?
That, in some cases, the local opposition, in general, the local opposition is not so hard, apart from certain areas. You have some municipalities that they declared by themselves, how to say, anti-wind by definition, like we got in the past for the nuclear plants. So we are anti-nuclear, and there were now that we have some municipalities that are anti-wind. This, let's say, prejudicial approach, which might be discussed, but apart from these specific cases that are not so much few, also in the areas where there are not great support, if you go locally with people that are very close to the plant, probably they are not so concerned about that. It's a new way of living the land and the area. So there is no great opposition locally. What is the issue is that the real issue is that populism is quite spreading everywhere. So the politicians which are taking the decision are very, let's say, scared about that. If one person is screaming for one turbine, they are scared about that. A lot of people start screaming. And they say, okay, let's better to say no, because nobody will scream for that. Because there will be only a company that will scream and say, oh my God, I cannot build my wind farm. But let's say it's not on the local communities the real issue of the permitting in Italy. It's more at not municipal, but I would say provincial or even at regional level. Even because in Italy there is a very specific issue, where the energy topic and matter is shared among central government and regional government. So, for example, the national plan defined by Italy and presented to Brussels is binding for the whole Italian nation, but is not binding for each regional authority. So the national plan might say 1,000 gigawatts of wind energy, but then each region may say not here, or here just 1 megawatt. Then what will happen? The 1,000 gigawatt will never appear. So this is the real point. And also, and internally in the government, you see the landscape issue, which is the biggest one. is managed by the Central Ministry of Landscape. And they say, okay, you decided for that, the Minister of Development. We are not involved in that, so we can take our decision, regardless what we decided and present it in Brussels. So they always come against with us.
So we see indeed there's a multi-level approach necessary at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Yes, I think that's an important outcome of this session here as well. Galina, as the last one again, Ukraine, you have these challenges that we heard, but the social aspects, do they already play a role? How to involve the local people who are living at the wind farm? Do they play an active role so far in the permission processes?
Yes,
Or
and for sure. And for sure, our environmental impact assessment includes public hearings and quite a big activity with the local communities. Otherwise, you will never get a permission, because local community opposition will totally destroy the project, any idea of the project, if such exists. And as for involvement of people into the project, so far, as you know, we have no local community projects in Ukraine, but nevertheless, all the developers, all the wind farms, they actively participate and provide social assistance to the local community on which territory the wind farm is located. It could be, let's say, starting from organizing a school bus for children, and for example, renovation or construction of a school itself, or some, let's say, when pandemic started, I know that many companies supplied medical equipment and medicine to the local hospitals. So otherwise, you know, it's not possible to develop. I suppose it's not possible to develop the project in any countries if you don't have a support from a local community. And negotiations with the local people starts from the very beginning, from the, let's say, more or less from the first idea. You have to develop a project, and throughout the whole lifetime of a project, you should communicate with people. When you start construction, you should communicate. When concerning everything.
yeah, thank you. That I think is reflecting the situation that we heard from others as well. So the social dimension is a key, but it's not the only one. So we have other things.
Sure.
If there is a rare eagle, then the support of the locals may not help to still overcome this particular challenge.
Let's say grid connection, biodiversity, local involvement, all these, let's say, main pillars for the successful wind development. Yeah. Sorry for interrupting you.
No. Thank you. Thank you so much for the dialogue that we had at the end. Let me again say thank you very much to all you as the presenters. As I said, this was just the start, and we want to focus in the next sessions on birds and bats. We want to focus on the impact, or what some people say is the impact on human health. We want to have a special session on social acceptance and how to deal with that. And there are other aspects like aviation, military radar, etc. So we will continuing during the summer into autumn with this topic. Again, thank you very much from my side to the speakers. I've shared the link here if you want to watch the session again. Please go to our website or go to our YouTube channel directly. And with this, I hand over back to Peter to conclude this webinar.
I'm having difficulty unmuting.
We can hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, good. Thank you very much. Well, what an interesting session it's been. And it reminded me of a story in 2005, we had the World Wind Energy Conference in Melbourne. And we had just shortly before, through the company of which I was chairman in Tasmania, we'd built a wind farm. And one of the things that we did to get the local community on side, because as people have been talking, it's reminded me of the importance of that. We were fortunate to know the local school teacher from the primary school who taught singing. And she wrote a story for us called the Wind Farm Song. And all the children at the school learned the Wind Farm Song. And their parents, of course, became interested in the wind farm because the children came home talking about the wind farm song. And we brought them to Melbourne from Tasmania to sing at the opening of the conference. And it was a wonderful touch, I thought. I was very interested in what other people do to attract the interest of the local community. Because one of the things that we also found in parts of Australia is that it seems that hearing wind farm is something which, if you've got an interest in it, you don't hear. But if you haven't got an interest in it, it's quite loud. And that's one of those psychological human reactions, I guess. But anyway, we've talked a lot, heard a lot about reactions, about the way in which you can or cannot work with the regulations, how to, if necessary, seek to change them. And thank you very much, everybody who's made a contribution. Thank you to all of those who've been listening into it as well. And that concludes the session for this webinar. However, I remind you that we'll be going on with the other parts of it shortly. Thank you very much.
Thank you.